The Salty Spitoon is one of the roughest, toughest places in all of cartoon history. How did the Salty Spitoon's original episode portray a piece of ultimate tough guyness? And did its subsequent appearances live up to its legendary introduction? Chapter 1. No Weenies Allowed. No Weenies Allowed is the first appearance of the Salty Spitoon. The episode revolves around SpongeBob trying to gain entry to the club only to be denied constantly by the bouncer, Reg.
Oh, your name's Reg.
The role of the Salty Spitoon in the story is that of the protagonist's main want, in that SpongeBob wants to get inside and his inability to do so is what drives the story. What makes the story interesting is that the place that SpongeBob wants to be in is a place that he clearly doesn't belong. This is first established by how much Sandy dominates SpongeBob in karate in the first scene, and later established further as SpongeBob gets more and more afraid of the other tough guys. The Salty Spitoon, as a plot device, represents the kind of person that SpongeBob wants to be, and the contrasting Weenie Hut Juniors represents the kind of person he is, with the heart of the episode, and the driving force of its comedy, revolving around SpongeBob trying to earn his place in the Salty Spitoon. One important element of the Salty Spitoon in this episode is that we never actually see inside of the building. This is a common writing strategy that elevates the status of a certain place or thing by letting the audience know some of what it is, but not showing the rest. The best example of this in SpongeBob is the Krabby Patty secret formula, which I did a whole video on how that's used in the show, by the way. You should check it out. With the formula, you know that it's a recipe that makes the Krabby Patty really, really good, but you don't know exactly what it is. So the thing your mind comes up with is more interesting than anything the writers could ever write. By doing this, we as the audience can imagine the inside of the Salty Spitoon using what we know about what we see on the outside and the patrons who enter. Also, by not seeing the inside of the Spitoon, we, out of curiosity, root for SpongeBob to make it inside because we want to see what's so special about this place. In the end, we do not see the inside of the Salty Spitoon as the scene cuts to an ambulance as soon as SpongeBob walks through the doors, with Sandy explaining he immediately slipped on an ice cube. The reason that we don't get to see the inside of the Salty Spitoon narratively is because SpongeBob didn't actually earn his entry, since Reg only let him in because SpongeBob faked a fight with Patrick to make himself look tough. Since he didn't really deserve to get what he wanted, he doesn't. This teaches the lesson of the episode, which is to be in tough places, you have to be tough just as well, if not better, than if SpongeBob's arc in the episode revolved around genuinely getting tough. Another interesting thing about this episode that other similar plots like this don't usually do is that the narrative doesn't paint SpongeBob as a victim for not getting into the Salty Spitoon. If anything, the narrative actually sides with the Spitoon and does its best to show us that SpongeBob doesn't deserve to be there. This is illustrated best with how the tough guys are presented in the episode. You would think that tough guys like this would be bad guys, but they actually aren't bad guys at all, just tough guys. Even Reg, the main tough guy and the antagonist of the episode, isn't explicitly cruel or a bully to SpongeBob. He explains politely that SpongeBob isn't allowed in, and when questioned, says that SpongeBob could prove himself if he fights Reg, which obviously SpongeBob doesn't do, but that's not Reg threatening SpongeBob, it's him asking if SpongeBob wants to agree to a fight. The other tough guy fish are also shown to be deserving of their spot in the Spitoon in contrast to SpongeBob. Like, look at the first fish in the episode who we see enter and why he's allowed in.
I had a bowl of nails for breakfast this morning without any milk.
While this is an absurd joke, the way that it's taken seriously in the narrative and the imagery of the impossible task of eating a bowl of nails like cereal shows us that this guy deserves to get into the Spitoon. Same goes for Sandy, who rips Reg's tattoo right off his chest and hands it back to him.
Wow.
SpongeBob, on the other hand, never proves himself, and in the end is only given entry into the Spitoon through trickery. And because he goes to the place he doesn't belong, he ends up in the hospital, proving Reg and the Spitoon right. Chapter 2. The Salty Sponge. While we never see the inside of the Salty Spitoon in No Weenies Allowed, we do see what's inside decades later in The Salty Sponge. I'm not sure how I feel about this. On one hand, by seeing the inside of the Salty Spitoon, it robs us of the initial mystery that was set up in No Weenies Allowed. On the other hand, the plot of this episode revolves around SpongeBob working at a tough guy restaurant and how he deals with that new environment, and the writers decided decided to use the Salty Spitoon as it's a recognizable tough guy location. The reason I think it is okay for this episode to show the inside of the Salty Spitoon, whereas No Weenies Allowed is better for having never shown the inside, because in The Salty Sponge, SpongeBob doesn't actually want to be there, whereas in No Weenies Allowed does. Also, the story itself literally revolves around him working there, so it would be pretty hard to tell that story properly without having him actually go inside. In the story, SpongeBob has to adapt to working at the Salty Spitoon and inadvertently becomes their leader through misunderstanding. This misunderstanding being that Mrs. Puff, who has the toughest fish around alter ego, which is consistent with her character considering her time in prison, is terrified of SpongeBob and flees the Spitoon as soon as she sees him. Side note, I love that she embraced the Big Fat Meanie nickname. Good for you, Puff. They can't mock you if you own it. While we as the audience know that Mrs. Puff is only afraid of SpongeBob because his past failed driving tests give her PTSD, the other tough guys don't know that and crown SpongeBob king of the tough guys, to which he makes some changes to the place. It's a solid cartoon trope. Character who doesn't belong in a place gets put in charge of said place, and by building off the foundation of the Salty Spitoon that was established in No Weenies Allowed, they were able to elevate that story. SpongeBob gets a lot of flack for referencing its past episodes, and that criticism is usually justified. But because the Salty Sponge used the Salty Spitoon to tell a new, fresh story, it succeeds as a reference episode. It's not a perfect episode. I mean, it's season 13, so it's not as funny or well-paced as an absolute banger like No Weenies Allowed, but it's a solid episode. I was actually surprised I enjoyed it as much as I did, but can I say the same about the next Salty Spitoon episode? Chapter 3, Squidward's Tough Break. Squidward's Tough Break is, at the time of this recording, the most recent appearance of the Salty Spitoon in SpongeBob. Unlike the first two Spitoon episodes which revolved around SpongeBob, this one revolves around Squidward. In the episode, Squidward mistakenly finds himself at the Double S when he mistakes it for his fancy pants brunch place. This is a good setup as it focuses on an element of Squidward's personality that would put him at odds with your typical tough guy, his pretentiousness. However, this is where my praises of the episode ends, because the inciting incident of the episode revolves around Squidward hitting his head, losing his memory, and turning into a tough guy. Do I even have to explain why this is bad writing? I will anyway. So this episode revolves around Squidward, who is usually very dainty, becoming a tough guy. But by having him become a tough guy because he just gets hit in the head, you rob Squidward of the ability to make the choice to become tough himself. No Weenies Allowed is an interesting episode because SpongeBob is actively trying to be tough against how society sees him. SpongeBob is a compelling character in the episode because he is choosing to act this way. Someone just turning tough because they got hit in the head doesn't tell us anything about their character. It doesn't tell us that Squidward ever had any desire to be tough, any desire to fit in with this kind of crowd, any desire to stand up to the other fish in the sea who swim all over him. It effectively just turns him into a completely different character who looks and sounds like Squidward but isn't him. Why do I care about watching this person? I don't know them. I don't know why the episode went in the amnesia direction. They could have just had Squidward enjoy being at the Salty Spitoon and decide to act like a tough guy and go rough up the Krusty Krab and then learn at the end of the episode that there are consequences to acting that way. Like, that's all you had to do, writers. Like, seriously. This amnesia plot point is unnecessary. It also takes away the ability for Squidward to actually learn anything because the episode just ends with him getting hit in the head again and going back to normal. So what lesson does this episode teach? That it's bad to break stuff? Well, wouldn't Squidward have already known that at the beginning of the episode? You know what this episode was really missing though? Weenie Hut Juniors. In No Weenies Allowed, Weenie Hut Juniors represents the place that SpongeBob does belong. And it's the place that SpongeBob doesn't like being because it makes him feel bad about his shortcomings. While Weenie Hut Juniors doesn't play as large a role in the Krusty Sponge, it does make an appearance towards the end of the episode after SpongeBob remodels the Spitoon to the Softy Spitoon. The redesigned Spitoon is so similar to Weenie Hut Juniors that these tough guy fish actually look across the street because they think they're in the wrong place. Both of these episodes use the hyper-exaggerated contrasting locations to further illustrate the difference between being a tough guy and a weenie. Squidward's Tough Break is the first episode that includes the Salty Spitoon, but not Weenie Hut Jr.'s. And I think that's a big part of why this episode didn't work. We aren't really seeing that sort of contrast that made the other episodes so strong. And you know what? It didn't even have to be Weenie Hut Jr. specifically, because Weenie Hut Jr.'s is more in line with SpongeBob's personality. Maybe if they showed the fancy establishment that Squidward wanted to go to in the beginning and have that be the Weenie Hut Jr.'s of the episode, with Squidward first wanting to go there, but later rejecting it when he adopts his tough guy persona. What makes this episode so disappointing is that it really missed the opportunity to explore Squidward's relationship to tough guy culture. And it wasted the idea of Squidward goes to the Salty Spitoon on something that just didn't live up to expectations. SpongeBob has all sorts of interactions with tough guy caricatures across many episodes of the show, but Squidward hasn't had as many of these interactions, and I really would have liked to see how a character like this would act in an environment like that. And I feel like we really didn't get enough of that, which is why Squidward's Tough Break fell completely flat for me. Chapter 4. The True Meaning of the Salty Spitoon. SpongeBob is, at its core, a show that is all about being unapologetically yourself. SpongeBob as a character is upfront about the things he loves, like jellyfishing, blowing bubbles, as childish as these things may be. But episodes like No Weenies Allowed show us that even someone like SpongeBob can find themselves feeling insecure about their place in society, especially when put in a situation where they are around a bunch of people that seem to fit their own mold in society so much better. This episode also applies to Salty Sponge to a bit of a lesser extent, and would have applied to Squidward's Tough Break if it didn't have that asinine amnesia plot. Those episodes use the existence of the Salty Spitoon as a symbol of what these characters are not, and what their characters are left out of. And this is why a place like the Salty Spitoon matters to people. We've all had that place that we couldn't get into. That place where we felt like we just didn't belong. That place that we felt like we had to change ourselves to be at. That's the Salty Spitoon. It's otherworldly, it's foreign, it's scary, but it's also exciting and interesting. But all you really have to do to get in there is eat a bowl of nails for breakfast without any milk. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. What does the Salty Spitoon mean to you? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, liking and subscribing goes a long way. But if you really want to help me get this channel to a place where I can make more consistent quality content for you guys, I do have a Patreon, or you can become a channel member. Also, check out my gaming channel where I cover the SpongeBob GBA games, among other things. That's all for me. See you next time.